in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you very much, Russell.
Thank you.
Andrew, do you want to come up and do we got two papers, the capital program performance report first, and then we'll do the management delegations review as well. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. Morena. I'll introduce the PMO report, and maybe David, someone's going to run some controls there for me. Just page 45, if you wouldn't mind just putting that up. Perfect, thank you. So the PMO forecast remains at 450 million, same as last month. That's against a budget of 490 million in the core capital program. The eagle-eyed councillors amongst you might have noticed the budget's gone up just a little bit since last report, and that's due to some adjustments around Te Kaha with budget phasing, no overall change. And you might recall the parks equipment that came through finance and performance to get some additional funding there for this current year. So those two things, plus any minor change requests that we do along the way, can change the baseline budget along the way. Just in my cover report, I talk about the exceptions that I just want to draw a little bit of attention to. The waste budget, I said I'd come back, having talked to the head of service there. The forecast there is pretty much right now, so there will be a small surplus in this financial year around waste. It's only to the tune of 4 million, so in the total context of the program it's quite small, but we've worked that through with Alec McNeil, and that course is pretty well set this year, so that would lead to some carry forwards or offsets against other service areas. And the digital budget is still being worked through. There's been some good progress with Head of Digital and ELT in recent weeks, so some further advice pending on that. Hopefully we can report that back to you next month. I'll just remind you that the watch list, it is key projects. That's another terminology. We've added Te Kaha Streets this time, so there's 22 projects on the watch list. This month we have not included craft and surf. We report that quarterly, but I will put it, so I did it last month, but I will put it in the October report just to get things back in sync and make sure we don't have too much of a gap over the Christmas break period. So you'll see it again next month. In terms of the dashboard report, which you've got up on the screen there, I'll take it as read, but there's just a couple of things I'll highlight. Page 44, if you wouldn't mind. So that's back on that sort of first page. Just drawing attention to the month highlight that we've put in there this time. The significant milestone around the Eastern Terrace water supply project down on the bottom left there with a photograph. It's a complex civil engineering project. Really tricky sort of traversing through suburbs, difficult geology down beside the river, under the river, maintaining public access along the way as well. It's a large pipe, 600 diameter pipe, and it's been carried out over a couple of years, so they've got to the practical completion end of things, and it's tracking along well within its latest and approved council budget of about 21 million. So a really challenging project that's been well executed. Just on the watch list heading, which I think is page it must be around about 60. You can keep going down to this. Yeah, that one. Sorry. Yes. Just drawing attention there. We've just put some traffic lights on that front page. To show what's included, but also the overall status. The overall status is something that the PM selects, having taken everything into account, so it's a subjective call. And I'll just point to a couple by way of example, as we're still kind of early stages with this dashboard. If you go to the Hallsville Junction Road one, which is page 61. So that's been deemed overall status critical, and the main reason for that, when you read the overall status commentary there and look at the little dashboards down the bottom right, is it's a time-related thing. So there's some issues there. They've started the project, you might recall, and there's still some uncertainty around the timing of the Kiwi Rail crossing that they're working through with Kiwi Rail, which has deemed it to be red. And just the second example, next page 62, this Lincoln Road passenger transport project, it's overall red on a couple of counts. One, it's in the detailed design stage, so they're still working through final shape and form of the design, but currently it is projecting a small overrun. But until they've got that buttoned down and revised estimates, they're not calling for additional money at this stage because they might be able to design it out. And the second count's actually on the time as well, because they're trying to make sure they get their project integrated with another project in council in the Three Waters service area. So there's just a couple of examples about how those things play out. Mr. Chairman, do you want me to address those couple of questions that came my way in the earlier reports?
That would be good.
Yeah,
That'd
okay.
be really good.
So to Councillor Harrison Hunt, on page 13, which was Peter Ryan's report of the agenda, you asked about, just onto that wee dashboard, thank you. I think you asked, maybe it was two things around the delivery milestones and why non-key projects were at 80%. Was that your question? Yeah. There's several hundred projects in that category. So this is an accumulation of the forecasts that project managers make against their baseline delivery, and 20% of them are forecasting over. So it's just an assessment by PMs about where they're at. And I suppose just while I'm there on those 2 points below, while Peter signalled their red on the planning aspect of things, that's quite legitimate at this time of year because the targets actually get ultimately measured on the 1st of March and the 1st of May. So things are still playing out there in terms of the forward-looking incentive for us to be drawing down projects and getting them into the planning stage. Does that help?
With those key projects, is Te Kaha included in the key projects that we're talking about here?
Yes, it is, yeah. So on that list of 22 Te Kahas, I think the first one. Yep.
Sometimes it gets excluded, etc. But this one,
in the financial reporting, but it's definitely on the watch list one. So you get a little dashboard there on Te Kaha.
It's really good presentation. I love the way it's set out.
Yeah.
The question other question I've got is around how much is each line worth? So the key projects, how many hundreds of millions, and non-key, how many hundreds of millions?
I'll come back to you on that one, but
Okay.
it's an easy bit of arithmetic. I just haven't done it.
Okay, no, that's fine. Sorry, I should have actually asked prior.
That's all right. Yeah.
But that's probably my big question was around those non-keys, accumulating it.
Yeah.
How many millions of dollars worth is it, and how much are we losing out on obviously timing, performance, etc.
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Great. So we've got Mark, and then we've got Celeste, Yanni, and Victoria.
Oh, sorry. The other question was the tendering one.
Do you want to address that now, Andrew?
That's a big question.
Well,
through you, Mr. Chairman. It might be one better.
Would be nice.
Yeah, it might be one directed at head of procurement, perhaps. I mean, it's.
I think it's probably useful actually for Dawn to get procurement to come in and explain how we do everything as well. It's probably a good point. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so we'll go with Mark, Celeste, Yanni, Victoria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just keen to hear. I heard QRail mentioned in part of your discussion there,
Yes.
and just wanting to really try and get a handle on where we're at with that QRail relationship. And there's a couple of key projects in Horsell Junction Road and in the South Express, which in my area, which are sort of quite critically timed around QRail. I'm wondering how we're going with that relationship.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I can't answer the detail of that one. That's something that transport staff are working through all the time. I haven't got the latest. I know Lynette's on leave, and I'm not sure if I've got a transport person here today to give the latest on that. But I know it's quite topical, and they do talk to them regularly, and that's exhibited through that Horsell Junction uncertainty.
Yeah, I spoke to Lynette yesterday after you flagged it as well, and we are waiting for the new minister as well. So in the next couple of weeks, we should have a clear indication. Yeah.
Very good. And you may not be able to answer this particularly. I might have to put this through to transport staff as well. But around the South Express and the Waterloo Gilberthorpe's Parker, I noticed Parker Street was mentioned in here as waiting on QRail engineers. And I'm just nervous around where that lies in relation to the community request for that entire treatment to be done rather than just the the major cycle route. So I'll perhaps flip through a question to
Andrew,
you.
happy to take that away and come back to Mark. That'd be great. Thank you, Mark. Celeste.
Thank you. Just wanting to follow up on a question I think was asked last briefing was with the Pages Road Bridge, that's listed, as far as I understand, it's the #1 transport project in Canterbury.
Yes.
But it doesn't have its own, we asked for that to be on the capital watch list as its own thing. It's currently listed under, on page 50, as sort of an item within a broader package of works, but I think that needs its own reporting dashboard, effectively.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman. So it hasn't made its way to the watch list based on those criteria that I outlined previously. We've got to keep the watch list, tight. We don't want it to go forever. It doesn't have a lot of budget in this year. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but I did say to you last time it's on the reserve list of the watch list. So when there's some significant activity, we can include it on the watch list. I could provide you a separate one-off report on it, but in terms of its the movement, there won't be a lot of movement on it this year because it's in the design and engagement phases, so it'll be pretty static in terms of a watch list project.
I think from my perspective, because it is the #1 transport project, and we've got some projects here that probably, in my view, would rank lower on the priority list, I would like to see that listed. So what's the process?
Will you just put an amendment up to request it on the watch list?
Okay, I'm gonna.
So if you get some wording through to David, yeah.
And then the other one that we asked about last time was we've got the MCRs listed on here, but there was some confusion around the one that goes along the city to sea pathway. So it'd be good to get the other one on there, which is the one that connects the city to New Brighton, because even though it's currently in the plan, but we don't have any visibility around that, and we should be looking at this long-term plan.
It's going to be a similar response through you, Mr. Chairman. I did look that one up because we swapped some emails on it,
I'll
didn't we?
just chuck some wording through for that one.
It's got a $130,000 budget on this financial year, and I think the total project, when things get going, it's all up about 30 million. So you can see why, from an officer perspective, we didn't deem it to be significant enough to be on the watch list based on those criteria that we presented to you earlier. But again, I mean, how long do you want the watch list to be? It's supposed to be key and strategic projects.
And I would say that one is a particularly strategic one.
Well, let's not argue with the staff.
I'm
They're
just
giving
going to put
advice.
that one.
Right, so can you get some wording through? Okay, Victoria. Oh, no, sorry, Yanni, then Victoria.
I'm just reading on page 45, where you've got program risk review, significant risks outlined below. Some projects requiring significant additional budget to meet revised cost estimates due to high inflation and cost escalation. And then you kind of talk through the mitigation, but one of the things that's not mentioned on the mitigation is actually just putting a pause on some projects until we can recover financially. So I'm just wondering, are you looking at projects that are blowing out in terms of cost and looking to delay them being done so that we can afford to do the ones that we're currently doing? I guess have a real sense of unease at the extra cost that we're facing, the financial challenges that we have as a council, and that we're heading for an LTP that's going to be put additional budget on to do the projects.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, I think that's a good question and quite sort of insightful and challenging. I think the short answer is no, because those projects that are in the annual plan have been approved by council and they're committed to, and they're being managed along the way. They'll have their their challenges and their risks that get managed, and when they are deemed to be required to come back for any different council decision, they would come back. So the commitments to deliver the current annual plan with all its associated projects until there's a council decision to say otherwise, I think.
Right, and so I had some specific questions around just trying to understand the variation tables. So if you go to transport, for example, and I look at on 47, Linwood, Wilson, Craft area project planning, year budget's 1.4 million,
year forecast is 0 and the variance is 1.4 million. Can you just explain what that's telling me in terms of progress on that project?
On that particular one, so at a higher level, what this table does is show progress against the budgets that each of those projects have this year, and we've flushed out the top and bottom 5 in terms of negative and positive variances. There's always a story behind each one, and it's not necessarily a bad story. Some variances can be good variances, and that things are progressing faster than the budget allows, so they might be accelerating. That one there, I don't have enough knowledge of it, but I can come back to you as to where that one's at.
Just at a high level, if something's shown in terms of the year budget as 0 forecast, does that mean that the work is not happening?
Or it could be a bad forecast, like it's not been done.
Okay.
So I'll look into that one and come back to you.
Right. Okay.
That's
Thank
okay.
you.
Yep.
And then I was just kind of...
So last one, Yanni, I've got other people. So
Yeah, cool. So I was just kind of keen to understand a little bit more about, I guess, the kind of the critical value engineering for some of the projects that are critical, and like at what point do we, if you look at the cycleways, South Express route, Northwest route, the PT one, for example, Lincoln Road, all probably going to require a huge quantum of funding. Are they just going to be addressed through the LTP, or are we going to get like a change report ahead of that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So I think we're on page 53. Is that right? You're looking at that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the kind of the overall ones that you've got where they're listed as critical. But if you look at each one, the financial status. I mean, just take the PT one. I'm deeply concerned at the financial cost that might have.
Yes, I think on the cycleways programs, a number of these have been briefed before as a collective, I think, haven't they, to this committee? And there are pressures in the cycleways program, and they are featuring in considerations in the LTP as well. So some where they're underway and there's a bit of program urgency, change requests are managed, and where there's more time on our side, they've been deferred into the LTP considerations. So it's a bit of a two-part answer.
Right. So just to be clear, like on page 66 for the South Express route, the forecast is $7 million ahead, more than the current budget, approximately. Is that going to come to us as part of an LTP decision, or is that going to be done through a change request?
okay, if you don't have an answer now, Andrew, you could take it away.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the figures. It could be either. I don't know off the top.
Can you just take that away and come back? Yanni, I'm keen to move on because I've got other people. Victoria?
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. I'm keen to see the overall capital programs on track, but there's an obvious outlier with the Otakaro Avon River Corridor, which is only on 58%, with quite a chunk in critical and at risk. I'm keen to understand why that is and what measures are being taken to get that back on track.
I'm sorry, can you just give me a page reference? 50. Oops.
Happy for you to come back to me if we haven't got the information today, but I'd just like to highlight it.
I can answer that one. That's so in the commentary above, I think we talked about this last time. There's not a huge number of projects in this program. I think it was something like 27 projects. So some of the key issues here that have triggered that critical red overall status is around particularly the consenting issues, the stormwater management and groundwater challenging issues. So that's what's triggered that proportional high critical status, which we're working through with ECAN.
And is that the major component that's going to prevent us from getting back on track? So there's actually completely outside your control as to try and get it back on track?
If Brent Brent was here. Tim's here. Maybe Tim might help me. But I think Brent Smith, Head of Water, reported last time that they are looking at different ways of addressing that constraint posed by the groundwater consenting issues. So they're looking at different design responses to see if they can, work their way around that risk. Tim, are you able to add anything for me on that one?
No, sorry, I'm not part of those conversations, but I can check in with Brent and come back to you.
Yeah, I did actually. It was on page 67, thanks. It's in relation to one of my, in my ward, the Wheels to Wings, section 1. I note that you've got the overall status on track with financial status and time status. I understand the time status, but I'm keen to understand in that financial status whether there's any update on the funding for the project and for construction. So whilst we may be on target for pre-construction, is there any update in funding for that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I don't have that information, but I just will, in terms of clarifications, this section 1 also holds the design and project management costs for the other sections as well. I think you understand that. But so as an overall, I can't comment further on the total picture. But again, I could through Lynette come back to you on that one.
And then the other comment I've got is to say that the detailed design and contract procurement is underway, given that this may be an issue will be an issue that will be discussed in our long-term plan. Have you got any comment about the procurement and whether there are any contracts have been led on this project ahead of it being considered in the long-term plan?
Again, I'd have to have Lynette give us the latest statement on that one in terms of where it's at in the procurement cycle.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Lastly, Aaron.
Yeah, just I had one, but it'll be two now because of Victoria's questions. We don't start a project until we've got the Waka Kotahi money locked in as well, do we? If it's one where it's a cost share.
That's a good question. Again, you don't have to answer it now. We can take it on notice.
I mean the contract part, the design part we do because
I'm just saying Andrew may not have the ability to answer that now, so we'll
I think it's
take it on notice.
Could be variable. Would you know that?
Okay, what's your second question, Aaron?
it was a follow-on from Yanni's. I think it was his third or fourth. It was in the middle of the pack there somewhere. It was the one around contracts not let yet. I thought a few months back we had asked a question about projects that were in this current annual plan as well as LTP of contracts that hadn't been let yet, that we might hit pause on stuff to hold budget back. Did we ever get that answer?
We might take that.
I think we did, but we will come back to you on that.
Yeah, Lynn will come back
Good question.
on that one.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we've got a resolution which Celeste is going to move, which is to receive the capital pro and add in these two. I think it's easier to do that as opposed to an amendment or anything like that, given they're just in there. Sarah's happy to second it. Does anyone want to discuss it? You do? Yep.
Actually, what I'd like to say is that just recognising that these reports, have to be submitted well before time, all of those kind of things, and just that while it mentions that January 2024 is the expected project completion for the coastal pathway, that'll be kind of when staff wrap it up, but actually as of last weekend it was completely walkable. There's still a few bits and pieces to do. The official opening's on the 30th of November, but people are already now using that full length of the coastal pathway, and it's been amazing. So,
cool, thank you. So we'll just put it to a vote. Everyone in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, you got another paper. On to your next one. I'm happy to move this as well, Andrew. And I think Tim's happy to second it. Yep. So do you want to just talk us through it, noting it's the review that we asked you to